Changes in Science During the Victorian Era. My report will be divided into two sections. The first part will be about 4 famous British scientists during the Victorian era, and the second part will be about changes in science all over the world during the Victorian era. William Whewell was an English scientist who coined the terms scientist and physicist. His best-known works are 2 large books on the development of the sciences. The first book, History of the Inductive Sciences, traced how the different areas of science had evolved over the years. His second book, Philosophy of the Inductive Sciences, founded upon their history, frequently referred to his first book and is considered to be support for his idea of a universal theory of knowledge. Charles Darwin was an English naturalist who was an agnostic, which means he thought it is impossible to know whether or not there is a God. He became famous for his theories on evolution. Darwin believed that over millions of years, all species of plants and animals evolved from several common ancestors. His theories were composed of several related ideas: that evolution had occurred, that most evolutionary change took thousands or millions of years, that evolution was a process called natural selection, and that all the modern species on Earth today evolved from a single original life form. His book, On the Origin of Species, was published in 1859. His ideas on evolution became accepted by scientists and the general public during his lifetime. They are also the basis for modern theory of evolution. Darwin's theories and writings, combined with Gregor Mendel's genetics theory, form the basis of all modern biology as well. Darwin's theory of evolution conflicts with the account of creation in the Bible. Michael Faraday was one of the greatest English chemists and physicists. He discovered the principle of electromagnetic induction. He found that moving a magnet through a coil of copper wire caused an electric current to flow through the wire. This principle is the basis of the electric generator and electric motor. Faraday's work in electrochemistry led him to discover a mathematical relationship between electricity and the combining power of a chemical. This discovery gave the first clue to the existence of electrons. He also introduced new ideas which would be the basis of field theory in physics. James Clerk Maxwell was a Scottish scientist and one of the greatest mathematicians and physicists of the 19th century. He is best known for his research on electricity and magnetism, and also for his kinetic theory of gases. This theory explains the properties of a gas in terms of behavior and of its molecules. Maxwell also investigated Saturn's rings, color vision, elasticity, optics, and thermodynamics, an area of physics which deals with work and heat. He based his work on electricity and magnetism on Michael Faraday's discoveries. By combining his ideas with Michael Faraday's and a few other scientists, he formed a mathematical theory which describes the relationship between electric and magnetic fields. Maxwell showed that waves in combined electric and magnetic fields traveled at the speed of light. These waves are called electromagnetic waves. He argued that light consisted of such waves, and he was later proved right. Maxwell developed a statistical law that gives the distribution of velocities among molecules of gas. Maxwell was the first scientist to use such a law to show how molecular behavior determines pressure, temperature, and other properties of a gas. Now we'll go through by decade the scientific changes all over the world during the Victorian era. In the late 1830s, Samuel Morse developed the telegraph and Morse code, and Fox Talbot introduced photographic paper. In the 1840s, ether was used in minor and major operations. The typewriter was invented, Philosophy of the Inductive Sciences was published by William Whewell, and Elias Howe invented the sewing machine. Monnier also developed reinforced concrete. In the 1850s, petrol, gasoline, refining was first used. H. Perkin produced aniline dyes, permitting brightly colored cottons. Louis Pasteur experimented with fermentation, and cathode rays were discovered. The Origin of Species by Charles Darwin was published. Etienne Lenoir demonstrated the first successful gasoline engine. In the 1860s, Lister demonstrated the use of carbolic antiseptic. Listerine mouthwash was named after him. Alfred Nobel produced dynamite, and he later instituted the Nobel Prizes. Mendeleev produced the periodic table of elements. In the 1870s, Christopher Sholes invented the Remington typewriter. James Clerk Maxwell stated the laws of electromagnetic radiation. Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. Robert Koch discovered the anthrax-causing microorganism, demonstrated its life cycle, and explained how it caused disease after long dormancy. Thomas Edison invented the phonograph. The microphone was invented, and Thomas Edison also invented the incandescent lamp. In the 1880s, Koch isolated tuberculosis bacillus. Maxim invented the machine gun. Carl Kohler used cocaine as a local anesthetic. Koch isolated the cholera bacillus. Benz developed the first automobile to run on internal combustion engine. Louis Pasteur developed hydrophobia vaccine. And Hertz produced the first radio waves. In the 1890s, William James published the Principles of Psychology. Koch developed tuberculin, which can be used to test for tuberculosis. Rudolf Diesel invented diesel fuel. Röntgen discovered X-rays. Becquerel discovered radioactivity in uranium. Joseph Thomson discovered particles smaller than atoms, and aspirin was invented. In the very early 1900s, Planck developed the quantum theory. Sigmund Freud published The Interpretation of Dreams, and Marconi transmitted the first transatlantic radio message. And that is my report on changes in science during the Victorian era.